All right, Benj and Justin, before we talk about Greatest Showman, you got some great news this morning with 2 Grammy nominations, one for La La Land and one for Dear Evan Hansen. Tell us about getting that news.
It was really exciting. Very, very exciting. It's funny. I actually had Alex Lackamore, who was our music supervisor on Dear Evan Hansen. He also worked on Greatest Showman as well with us. Funny, he's like in my, because we talk all the time about whatever we're working on. He's in my favorites on my iPhone, and so I had my phone. I went to bed last night and did the old do not disturb kind of thing, but I just hadn't thought about this morning, and so I went to bed a little bit late, and I was like, well, I'll sleep as late as I can and get ready for the day. But then I was woken suddenly because my phone was ringing at 5:30 in the morning in LA. And Alex is in London right now working on Hamilton, so I'm sure I can't do the math, but he's many, many, many hours ahead. So my phone rang at 5:30, and I was so disoriented. I didn't know what day it was or anything, and I was just like, send it to voicemail. And I just remember being like, I hope I'm not awake for the day now. Why is he calling at 5:30 in the morning? Like, what's going on? And then I woke back up again, and there were texts from family and friends and stuff, and it was like, oh, this is what Alex was calling about. So that was cool to get to connect with him and friends and family, and it's exciting. I mean, we got to work with just really incredible teams, from the musicians to the vocalists, producers, arrangers, everyone on both of those albums, on La La Land, the recordings, and the actors obviously, and Dear Evan Hansen. So it's a celebration of a lot of marvelous musicians.
When your phone rings at 5:30, it's probably good news or bad news.
Right, it's an extreme of some kind.
Yeah. So we got lucky today.
Yeah.
Well, The Greatest Showman opens at the end of December. So for all your fans that haven't seen it yet, because no one's seen it, what can you basically tell us about the plot a little bit, and about, is there a big opening number like in La La Land?
There's a definitely big opening number. It's inspired by the life of P.T. Barnum. It's sort of a storybook version of his life and sort of what he represented. This belief that the world is not as it is, but it's what it could be, and this sort of fantastical vision of that the world is what you make it. So it really, for us, it lends itself to being a musical in the sense that he has a larger than life view of what the world is. And so there's a big opening number called The Greatest Show, where it sort of introduces us to the world of the circus.
You sort of meet him at the height of his prowess or showmanship, really, honestly, and you see him in the circus, and we sort of were introduced to that world, and then the story sort of takes you back. So we're sort of in the middle of this moment, and then we kind of pull back, and you see sort of his roots and the story of sort of his humble beginnings and what was driving him and what was motivating him, and then all along the way you follow the story of his life and the invention of the circus. But it's sort of, as Ben was saying, it's sort of a storybook, a version of that story that really leans into sort of the wonder of it and the joy of it and the spectacle of it. It's a family-friendly movie. It comes out right around Christmas. And I think, a lot of what we did in the film was writing music that was meant to entertain and meant to, be something that kids and parents and grandparents, hopefully everybody can sort of come together on the holidays and enjoy and consume together. I know that I'll be taking my mom and dad and my daughter. I don't know if she'll last very long, but I know we're excited.
She's under 2. So.
Yeah, exactly. But she has lasted through a couple of movies, or a little bit. We take her in and out. But having worked on Dear Evan Hansen, it sort of is fun and interesting to get to do something that's much lighter and much more sort of focused on joy and optimism, and I can sort of take my daughter to it.
And it's celebrating wonder and magic, we lived for a long time in very kind of
darker spaces,
darker, shadowy places, and to get to write a score that really is about joy is a thrill.
How important, especially with P.T. Barnum, is it that Hugh Jackman, a charismatic man himself, an actor, a musical actor sometimes, is the star, and how much input did he have with you about the songs?
A lot. Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's hugely important. I mean, the film is all about a charismatic, dynamic figure, and his larger than life vision. And so, Hugh is just perfect. He's insanely, annoyingly charismatic.
On screen and
ridic-
off, he can convince you to do anything.
He's the sort of song and dance man of our time, and so it obviously was a thrill to get to write this for him and with him, and to that end, he really was. He was a collaborator in ways that he's aware of and he's not aware of. Ways that he was aware of, he was giving notes on songs and giving thoughts and sort of all along the way. This was his project before it was anyone else's, certainly before we were involved. So he was giving a lot of notes on it, but also for us as the songwriters, as we're writing every song, to know the voice that we're writing for really informs what we write. So he was that sort of third subconscious, collaborator in the room, because anything that we'd write, a melody or a lyric or whatever it was, there was sort of like the Hugh test of how would Hugh sound on that? Is that cool? Is that not cool? Will that feature his sort of big, beautiful voice, or is it a quiet, intimate moment? Either way, it was always sort of like the Hugh litmus test of how's that gonna, how will he respond to that, and how will that be performed in a way that sort of highlights his incredible skills, of which there are many. So he was involved.
And from a songwriting standpoint too, stylistically, Hugh and Michael always wanted to write a story that felt contemporary for this telling of P.T. Barnum. And I know Hugh's talked often about how he wanted it to be something that his 14-year-old daughter would spark to as much as his grandmother as well. So I definitely like that kind of vision accompanied with who he is as an actor, and the contemporary sensibility that people were trying to achieve even before we came onto the film definitely informed how we approached the material.
I'm curious, how long did the whole creative process for you guys take? Like, how many months and years of your lives were devoted to The Greatest Showman?
Well,
It's always in bursts, you know.
Yeah, totally.
But in terms of like span, this would kind of be the longest, or be up there with it, because the other things have happened sort of in the meanwhile since we started working on it.
Yeah, we started to work on. We met our collaborator on Dear Evan Hansen in LA at the beginning of 2013 to really begin to dive into that stage musical. And we happened to be in the right office, at the right time for the very first opportunity that we ever had to write anything for a film project. And, especially at that time, the idea of getting to do a movie musical seemed like pie in the sky. Like, it didn't seem like it would ever happen. And it was a real thrill that it began to take shape. But I guess it started, in 2013 and then, we began to develop it.
Yeah,
while
always
we were
like in
developing other
bursts.
projects.
So it's like, we'd focus on that for a few weeks and then turn to Dear Evan Hansen, or turn to then eventually La La Land and some other things. But it was several workshops and readings and over a period of 2013 until December of 2017 when it finally comes out.
We mentioned the Grammys earlier. You've had just an incredible year overall in the last 12 months with an Oscar win and the Tony win. Take us back to Oscar night. What were your thoughts as you sat down that night, and what was the moment like when it happened?
Oh, I think it's just a blackout moment. It's one of those things that maybe you can watch it and be like, was that real? Like, was I actually there? And it seems so surreal, and I think it'll always seem really surreal. It was wonderful to share it with the team, and we became very close with our collaborators on that project, and Damien and Justin have become good friends of ours. So to get to sort of celebrate that evening together was a real thrill.
I watched your speech last night, and the moment where you thank your mom and she gets up and shouts, that was such a cool moment.
She's a Jewish mom. She got very, very excited, but I didn't tell her that I was gonna say anything about her. So I think that that particularly she was really surprised, and I'm really happy that we got to share that moment together too.
And then the Tonys last June, winning for Dear Evan Hansen. How was that experience different from the Oscars?
Yeah,
I thought whenever I've talked to Tony, people nominated at the Tonys or performing at the Tonys, they often talk about how that whole award show is such a community everybody works within a few blocks of each other,
Right.
so
Everyone knows everybody.
Right.
Yeah,
I think at the Oscars, it's almost like
I
a
think
bunch
at
of
the Oscars,
a foreign.
It was us. The Oscars was definitely us gawking at like we couldn't believe.
We definitely felt like guests at a really, really cool party, and we feel of course part of the community, but we are we were born and bred as theater people, as New York Broadway kind of people. So I think the Tonys definitely feels like that. It definitely feels like you're at this sort of small family event, and it's a smaller industry, and it's also the real estate is much smaller. It's those 10 blocks in New York, and it's sort of like the world knows the Oscars, which is really an incredible thing. I think the Tonys night, I think a lot of Broadway folks feel like this is the one night where everybody knows about Broadway and can celebrate Broadway, and it's an important industry and art form, and I think there's always a sense of, there have been articles written throughout the years of like, is Broadway dying or any of those things. So I think anytime the Tonys come around, everyone feels like, oh, this is an exciting night because we get to celebrate this art form that everyone's really passionate about, and so it felt like a family event, and to be there with our collaborators on that show, and for the show itself to be recognized, that was the most exciting part. And watching so many of our colleagues get up to be recognized for their achievements was definitely the highlight for us. Running into our collaborator Stephen Levinson backstage, we didn't know he had won because we had gone backstage already, and then he came around the corner,
swing around the corner,
and we were like, "What are you doing here?" And he was like,
"He's holding a Tony Award."
I won. We're like, "Really?" He's like, "Yes, I'm holding the thing." We're like, So it was that was like we were really crossing our fingers for him and all of our colleagues. So to get to watch them have that experience was the true highlight.
In LA where we are right now, there are posters everywhere for The Greatest Showman and billboards everywhere, and a lot of them say "from the lyricists of La La Land." So is there a lot of pressure to have that kind of moniker around your names?
I think. Yeah.
I
I don't know. It definitely is like
they're two very different.
Yeah, it's
projects.
To us, it's like, oh sure, okay, I guess that's technically true, but I'm not sure one has to do with the other. I mean, they're both musicals, and so that's good, but they're such different films that I think
and their ambitions and are different, and
which is cool, which is the really cool thing to get to have worked on La La Land and what that was, and then Greatest Showman, which is what that's meant to be, which is something very different. I think it's cool. If you're asking us, we wouldn't mind if they lost the moniker, but look, it's
just Benj and Justin.
Yeah, or just
or just Hugh Jackman.
It's like there are some exciting selling points about the film with some wonderful actors, but I think part of the I think that we like about being writers as opposed to being actors is kind of being in the background, and hopefully the work speaks or doesn't speak, but that's sort of like what our focus is, and just getting to work as hard as we can and try to make something that we're proud of, and sort of let it be out in the world, and let the actors shine and let them really take center stage, because they give really incredible dynamic performances in the film.
You've got the Oscar, you've got the Tony, you nominated at the Grammys. We talked about that earlier. Just need the Emmy for EGOT. I remember interviewing Lin-Manuel Miranda around this time last year. He could have become the youngest EGOT winner ever. Some group from La La Land took him out, though, at the Oscars. But what would that mean to you if you were to ever join that group? You'd have to, maybe Christmas Story or something else would have to take off at the Emmys.
I think I don't know if this probably doesn't sound like a real answer, but it is real. We're really just focused on just trying to write musical material that we're proud of, and work on projects that are exciting to us, and we feel really, really lucky that we get the opportunity to write musicals that are getting to be seen. So that feels like a really far departure from what our careers looked like 3 years ago, So for us, it's really an honor to be recognized with people that we respect so much, having experiences like at the Oscars where we're getting to see people that we've been fans of for so long, like Sarah Bareilles backstage, we get to geek out over the people whose music we listen to, and get to be in the room with collaborators and artists that we really respect. So all of the rest of it is just cherry on top of an incredible Sunday, but we just honestly feel really lucky that we're getting to write and
to be working songwriters. You know what I mean?
That's
I think that was always our goal from square one, and that'll keep being our goal. And look, we also know that because we see it all the time, and we've experienced, you know, our own little mountains and valleys. I think that you know, things can sort of come in and out of fashion, and you never sort of know. You hit a tougher streak, or things go well, or whatever. So I think having any focus on the awards thing is, while it's wonderful, and we love seeing our colleagues especially recognized, it kind of can come and go, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the next thing is going to be anything or guarantee anything. So I think like focusing mostly on just trying to work on the assignments that we're given or that we choose, that's the most exciting part, and just to get to keep working is our goal.